forsaken. The dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Rashida. That was beautiful.
And as Lucia, we welcome everybody to Chicago and to Mashtal. We'll start on the seminars. I just want to introduce Dr. Nafisa Karyali. She is a qualified obstetrician, gynecologist and psychiatrist. She holds a board certification from 4 different countries, and she now practices women's mental health, especially reproductive psychiatry. She is also part of Burhani Women's and a very, very key player in the entire setup of Mashtal. I'll hand it out to her now.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Beli babe waliyi wa bidaihi asfainu fi jami'ihim. Sayyidat Hasra Amina sahibo, मुमिना बहनों अन्य भाइयों, सगला ने तो मैं पहले मश्तल ना तरफ सी, शिकागो ना तरफ सी, आनंद व सानंद पहुँचे, अने शुक्र अदा करूँ છું કે आप लोग सगला आया अने हमने हमारू सक्सेस आप लोगों ना आवासी છે. हमें भले कई भी करिए पर आप लोग ना आते तो हमारू सक्सेस ना थाते. So the topic today that I have is women's mental health, and I decided that I will just touch on various aspects of mental health across the lifespan of women. And the reason I decided to do that was because we have women of all different ages attending today. So just all different ages. And why women's health? Because this is a women's expo. All the participants are women, and can see that majority of the attendees are women. And the main thing I want to talk about and focus on is the role of women in the family. Women have a very pivotal role in the family. And if a woman's mental health is affected or disturbed, the woman is not emotionally healthy, then that affects the entire family. So it's not that men's mental health is not important, but we strongly believe that if there is a woman who is carrying out her role as the pillar or the anchor of the family, can keep the emotional stability in the entire family. So certain differences in women's mental health and mental health in men. By statistics, depression is twice as common in women, and this starts around puberty. So before puberty, the rate of depression is equal in boys and girls. Around puberty, you start noticing that difference, and it goes to almost twice in adulthood. Similarly, anxiety disorders are more common in women. Obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD as we call it, are more common in women. But bipolar disorder, which is commonly known as manic depressive illness, or schizophrenia, which means psychosis, like people hallucinate, hear voices, or have delusions, these are almost similar in men and women. So now we move on to why these differences, why illnesses, certain illnesses are more common in women and certain are not. So there are some gender differences, and these gender differences, they affect the mental health condition. And society has defined gender roles for men and women. So for example, society expects a girl to play with dolls, and boys have different play games. Similarly, culture has effect on boys and girls, and as they grow up and as they follow their culture, there are certain norms which are imposed, or I should not use the word imposed, but certain norms that people expect them, that boys will behave in this way and the girls will behave in this way. The boys will dress up like this, the girls will dress up like this. So there are these differences which start from a very early age and they continue in the adulthood. And sometimes if things are not going well, these can also affect the mental health condition. Then the coping style is very different in men and women. So women, if you say something, they will ruminate about it. Why did this person tell me this? I never did anything wrong. Why should she come and tell me something like this? And they internalize. They don't speak out about it, but they just keep ruminating inside themselves. And that makes them predisposed to depression. Similarly, there are certain gender-linked stress and traumas. For example, in girls or women, there are traumas which are more prevalent, like different types of abuse. And then they makes them more vulnerable to depression and illnesses like PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. The other reason for when the period starts. So that's an example of biological changes, how it affects a woman's health. Another case example, pregnancy. So Mariam Ben is a 24-year-old, recently married housewife. She just found out that she is pregnant. The pregnancy is unplanned, but it is desired. She's very happy that she is pregnant. Now, the complicating thing is that she has a 4-year history of depression. She is on antidepressant medications and she's not sure what to do next. Okay? So she's going through a lot of anxiety and stress in her mind. How would this depression affect my baby? Should I just stop the medication? Should I continue it? How would the medication affect my baby? And she's having thoughts like, why am I going through this? I should have probably never gotten pregnant. So again, in cases like this, there is no simple answer. Now, I want to remind everybody that even if we take a Tylenol, Tylenol has its own adverse effects. So no medication we can vouch and say that this is safe. Every medication has its side effects. And similarly, the illnesses also have an effect on the pregnancy, the fetus, and the DNA. So for example, if somebody is severely depressed, it affects their pregnancy, it can have effect on the baby, and it can cause postpartum depression. So when it comes to cases like this, probably mild to moderate cases we can deal with without medication. In severe cases, we might need medication. But it is all risk-benefit analysis. So you have to work out either the benefits of taking medications are more or the benefits of not taking medications are more. Are the risks of medications more or are the risks of illness more? So this becomes a very complicated case and that's where you need expert help. Another example, perimenopause. So Shirin Ben is a 50-year-old accountant and she presents with significant depression. She reports some difficult experiences earlier in her life, but no significant depressive episode until recently. She went through divorce, she moved away from her family, and her menopause happened around the same time. And she is now reporting crying spells, worthlessness, poor sleep, anxiety, and she's also at times having thoughts that she's better off dead. So if you look at this example, she has stressors. She just got divorced. She has very poor support system, and she went through menopause. So now the symptoms that you see here, the crying spell, the worthlessness, the poor sleep, anxiety, these are all symptoms of depression. And she's also having negative thoughts of suicide. So what do we do? Huh? So most important, first of all, is to recognize, because she may not even tell anybody, because we all know that mental health carries a huge stigma. Yeah? And if she doesn't say anybody, if her negative thoughts become stronger, and if she ends up doing something, then what happens? Yeah. And we were so fortunate that in London, Ashram Mola's first bayan was on this. Yeah. And the first bayan where and this is like what I felt, that I studied and I spent years and years studying all this and learned about mental health and psychiatry. And Mola, in 2 hours, just explained it all. And what was the main message that Mola gave? That now meet ki. Positive attitude. And istighfar. And if you do that, you take care of all this. Your family, your support system. And how much Mola stressed about how horrible is suicide and what happens if somebody thinks of it. But the point Wome just told me, you have breast cancer, okay? He told her you have to undergo surgery, you might need chemo, and she's thinking, oh no, what about if I die on the table? And then she's having thoughts of, if I undergo surgery, what is my body going to look like? Will I no longer be a woman? Huh? And then chemotherapy. She is wondering, I'll lose all my hair. Okay, so problems with socialization, problems going to friends, family. So these illnesses in women can cause significant emotional health or mental health changes. So whether you call it depression, anxiety, and this is the time again, the woman just doesn't need surgery or chemo or radiation. She needs more support. People need to understand that she's going through all this, not just with the diagnosis, but through the treatment and all, even after the treatment is over. And she needs our support, she needs our understanding, and she needs help to get through it. Midlife issues. So, as we grow older, the aches and pains get common. We develop chronic medical conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure. Some of them lose their spouse, they are now widowed, they are financially dependent on the families, and some end up getting enforced babysitting roles. So they have that sense of, again, isolation, they've lost their freedoms, and they sometimes feel that they are now on a burden on the family. So again, give you an example. Batul Aunty lost her husband 3 years ago. She is diabetic. Her knee hurts a lot. It makes it difficult for her to move about. She lives by herself, and she also takes care of her 4-year-old granddaughter. When her husband was alive, she never missed a meepat. Now she has to ask around for transportation to go to masjid. And now lately, she's lost all interest. She does not take care of her diet or medications, and she spends most of the day sleeping. So again, if you look at this example, as she grew older, she went through all these stresses, the medical conditions, loss of a spouse, loss of financial freedom, and getting more socially isolated, and now she's slipping into depression. So what do we do again? Okay? And again, the reason I bring this up is that this is not uncommon in our community. Okay? And my only purpose in doing this, that Mola is telling us, Mola is showing us the path. बुजुर्गों ने ख्याल रखो, बुजुर्गों ने बीवी जो में हेल्प करो, बच्चा होगी अकेला ना होके कोई नहीं. But then beyond that, I think the message is for the entire community that please look out for these people and do whatever you can and help prevent that depression. And if they are, please reach out to them and have them reach out so that they can get the help they need and they can feel better and they can have that life that they are used to. So that brings me to some of my last slides, the roles, demands and balance. So we see a woman has various roles throughout the life stages. She's a daughter, she's a sister, she's a wife, mother, and also caregiver, and sometimes also the breadwinner. And the demands are, you see, she's just literally pulled in all different directions. So many would say, oh, what can I do? I just can't handle this. So this is the stress. And now that stress is leading to her emotional instability or mental health conditions like depression or anxiety. So what next? And as I was preparing these slides, I came 2 days ago and I saw these and I said, this says it all. Marato Rehan. So Bairo Rehan Ache Tujbuche. So again, that brings me back to Bairo Rehan Ache Tujbuche. Bairo is the pillar, the anchor. And it becomes a very balancing act. And how do you balance? That's also written in all this. Okay? So first of all, a woman has to believe in herself. Okay? You believe that you are capable. Okay? The men and women brains are different. Women, the gender difference is the women brains are more detail oriented. Women are made more tolerant and they are much more capable. So you believe and then you grow, you help your family grow. Okay? You inspire, you succeed, your family succeeds. Okay? So, and you have a dream, you achieve it, your kids will achieve it with you. Okay? So key factors are, remember, women are the pillar and anchor of the family. That's your main role in various capacities throughout your life. Whether you are a daughter or a sister or a wife or a mother. Okay? And your family is your priority. So most important thing is you want to keep the emotional health of your family in a balance, then you have to be patient. You have to keep your calm. And for this, I would strongly suggest time management because there are only 24 hours in a day and there are multiple things that you are supposed to do in a day. So time management. Has anybody ever thought how much time you spend on the phone? Right? And then what happens? Oh my God, I haven't finished cooking the dinner yet. The kids will be coming home now. Oh, my husband is going to get mad. So it's just like make a schedule. And in that schedule, time for yourself and time for your daily activities. So let's say when you're going for namaz, first you start with wuzu. So that cleanliness, that taharat itself starts calming you down. Then you go for your prayers. It may take only 5 or 10 minutes, but that's time for yourself and time again for your stress relief. And you have a schedule for everything in your time. Time management is the key to keep your stress under control. And most importantly, I have to say that we are so grateful to our Akamala for showing us this guidance and this path, that how do we do stress management? How do we keep ourselves? How do we keep our emotional health under control? So Like for example, in this Ashara Mubaraka, Maulana Alina Kalam, and he told us things, especially the first verse, struck me so much that now make me like, because I see patients all the time who are like, this is the end, I can't do anything. Besides suicide, I have no other option. And it is like, that is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. So, and how Mullah has turned us into that when you hit that road, that there's no other option, that's when you think that why is this happening? Your positive attitude, your hope comes in, and slowly that pessimism starts turning into optimism. And for this, for us, most important thing is our Shariat, our Deen, our Mullah's Kalam, and Mullah has also repeatedly told us that if you are stressed and you just cry because I can't achieve this, or I'm so upset this happened to me, I lost my job, or my friend told me this, then if you have to cry, why don't you do Nohai Nabil of Aqam Hussain? And that would be your best stress reliever. And it would not just relieve your stress, but it would bring back that positivity in your thinking. So, and science has shown repeatedly that spirituality is a key. Spirituality is the key in improving so many illnesses. Science has shown that if somebody is spiritual, the results of the prognosis of any illness is much better. And that is what we're learning from now. So in the end, I want to say that तबीबोना तबीब मौला जे अपने यहाँ सिखा भी रहा है सब लोग परवरदिगार आ मौला ने हमेशा हमेशा ना वास्ते बाकी रखे अने एना सायामा जे मौलानी मंशा छे एम हमें अमल करता रहिए अने हमें जान जिस्म हर चीज़ थी हमें हमारी हिफाजत थाय अने हमें हक में रहिए शुक्रिया I think questions no time नहीं हो रहा If somebody has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Like so, I'm around. You can find me. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Munira Kasrai. She obtained her bachelor's and master's degree from University of Pune and her PhD from University of Tennessee. She also has postdoctoral training at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland, and she joined National Institute of Health in 1998. And she's currently a senior scientist there in the genetics branch of National Cancer Institute, and her research is focused on defining mechanism of chromosomal instability, a hallmark for cancers using model systems and mammalian cells. She has served on several committees, including the Cancer Advisory Board, and she's received numerous awards for her mentorship and her training and pursuing independent research careers in academics and industry. And on a personal note, I've known Dr. Munira since childhood and we've grown up together. So welcome.
Thank you. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I welcome Bhai Sahiba, Fatima Sahiba, all the Kasrali Sahibu and other Sadat Kiram and Mumina and Mumini Bhaiyo. I hope my seminar will inspire you to promote the careers of your wives and daughters. So without further ado, I'd like to talk about my career. So, I mean, this is a question. I mean, what do you guys see in this picture? Can you answer? I mean, I see a few things, but I want to know what you think. Ladies. Fatima, what do you see in this picture? You see an iceberg. No, speak up. So you see the tip of the iceberg, but you also see the lot of the depth underneath it. right? So visually, when we look at our lives and our careers, we are mostly looking at the tip, right? There is a lot of depth that goes into this that is not visible to most people. And that is what I would like to talk to you today. I would like to talk to you about the depth of what it takes to hold the iceberg in its place, right? And in order to do this, I'm not here to give you a toolkit for a successful career or business, because I think most of you can go to Amazon or go to YouTube and buy a book on Stephen Covey. So I'm absolutely not interested in going through, oh, you have to have a goal, you have to work hard, you have to do this, that, and the other. I think that's pretty much common sense. We all have to do it, right? So I'm not going to talk about the toolkit, but rather what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about the challenges I have overcome as a woman, a Muslim woman from minority coming from India, and how I overcame these challenges and how I used my resources to be where I am. And I hope my personal story, which you will not see on Amazon or YouTube, will inspire you to follow some of the same things. So the journey of my life begins when I was born in Pune, which is not even on a map. It is a small city, 170 miles south of Mumbai, right? So I grew up in a very small city. My parents, Hussain Bhai Poonawala and Mullah Sharifa Bhai Poonawala, had only gone to high school. They had never obtained a college education. I can definitely tell you that being a geneticist, I inherited the genes from both my parents, but then my family, my spouse, my husband, and Mona, most importantly, let me express those genes, right? So the genes came from my parents, but there was a lot of play behind it. And I have two brothers, a younger brother, Riaz Poonawala, who is a famous cricketer. He has played at the international level. And my elder brother, Juzabhai Poonawala, who is in Pune. So my two brothers were not even really remotely interested in education, because they would go to the cricket match, they would hit a sixer, they would be very famous, their pictures would be in every newspaper. Whereas I struggled to study because the philosophy of my parents was that a woman needs to be educated, because educational qualification has a lifetime of benefits. It gives you maturity, it gives you confidence, and it gives you independence. And indeed, why are we here today? Because our beloved Akka Mola also wants to promote the career and the upliftment of women, and I'm entirely grateful to the Chicago Jamaat for facilitating this. So with this, I would like to talk to you about my journey. So I always wanted to do something in healthcare, but one thing was sure, that I could not see needles, I could not see blood, and I couldn't see patients. So from early childhood, I told my mom I wanted to be a scientist. So when people joke with me, I do say that I decided to be a scientist the day my mom conceived me, which is really true. So my mother, not having any education, was really desperate how she was going to make this happen. And at her own level of resources, she found out that I could do a bachelor's and master's in microbiology, which was a little close to microorganisms that cause human disease. So with the Raza and Dua Mubarak of Ayul Muqaddas Sayyidina Muhammad Burhani, I finished my bachelor's and master's in Pune University, and I finished that in 1979. And my long-term goal of doing a PhD was always in my mind. But unfortunately, my father, at the age of 51, died of a massive heart attack. He literally walked into his grave. And I was very young, not married, my younger brother was not married, and we had a lot of financial debt. So obviously, for me, the dream of doing a PhD was born in real sense, but inside my heart, I know I wanted to do it. So after my mother finished her mourning period, we went to Mola for Kadambosi, and my mother told Mola, my degree is educated, I want an educated boy, I want somebody who will promote a career, but I want somebody who has a religious value, who loves you, Mola, who respects you. Mola looked at me very intently, and next day I met my husband. So the story about my PhD begins in this little park, Empress Garden, where we went for a day. And this is a true picture. So we were in this park, and we were sitting on a bench, and I met my husband Adnan Basral, and this is the conversation we had. Adnan asked me, what is your career goal? And I said, I want to do my PhD in USA. He looked straight into my eye and said, oh wow, even I want to go to USA. At that point, it was love at first sight, love at first statement, right? I came home and I told my mom, I'm marrying this guy because he's going to let me do my PhD. And my mom tells me, oh, you have to check out his family, his finances, his resources. Doesn't matter. He's going to take me to America. I'm going to do my PhD, right? So the next thing was we went to Mola, we did arrest. And obviously, Mola blessed both of us. Our nikah was held at the hand of Burhani Mola. And soon after the nikah, we did arrest, saying, Mola, we want to go to America. And Mola, they sakta gave both of us raza, which was a little unusual because, Mola was very particular about who went to USA, right? So this is, the journey of my life. So the take-home message for the women in this audience is, have your goals set and you will find the people who will promote your goal. So do not believe that what you want to do is not possible. With the raza of your spiritual leader and support of your family, you can accomplish it. So the journey of my career began from this little town, Pune. I migrated to Bombay after I got married. And a year after we got migrated, we decided to come to the US. And this would have absolutely been not possible without the support of Adnan's elder brother, Adnan and Habib Mariam, who helped us in every possible way to make it happen. So without going into the elaborate details of what we did, my take-home message for the women in this audience is, you plan your journey. You have a destination, you have a origin and you have a destination. And whenever we set a destination, for example, I want to travel from Washington to Boston. So I have a nice car, I pack it, leather seats, I have all the snacks, I fit the fuel, I have a spare tire, I have everything. And most importantly, I have my wonderful husband next to me, right? But I have to be prepared that along the journey I will have detours, I'll have bad weather, I'll have a flat tire, I'll have people who will misguide me. All of these obstacles are going to come. But is that going to stop me from going to Boston? Absolutely no, right? And I'm not telling you that I've reached the tip of the iceberg that Fatima talked about. I still have long ways to go. But I'm extremely grateful for where I am. So I'm going to talk to you about my journey, and I'm only going to talk about the obstacles I faced as a woman, Muslim woman coming from India with Indian credentials, and what I did. So the first thing you do in USA is, TSA pre-check and everything you do. Well, me and my husband came to the US only with 2 suitcases. And we landed in the middle of nowhere just with 2 suitcases. We had nothing, absolutely nothing. And, we were in the middle of a university and we didn't even have a first pot to make a cup of tea, right? So that's how our journey began, but that was not going to stop us because we knew Mola had blessed us and this was going to be possible. So the first obstacle I had was my education qualification, which was from India. My ethnicity and my religious identity was definitely a major factor for me. And most importantly, we had nobody in the USA. Literally landed there in 1985 on September 1st, which is a Labor Day weekend, and we had no idea this is a federal holiday. And a month later, we got 100 inches of snow, and I don't even have a sweater, right? So this is where we migrated. So my very, very supportive husband was doing his engineering over there. There was no PhD program, so we did arrest to Mola, and Mola gave us raza to go to Knoxville, Tennessee, where I could do my PhD. So I initiated my graduate career. We traveled from Fargo to Knoxville, and mind well, we couldn't afford a plane, so we traveled on a Greyhound bus with 4 boxes and had the other 3 boxes made, right? So I did my PhD in this university, and the challenges I had was they would not accept me into the PhD program, even though I was a gold medalist from the Pune University. For them, masters meant nothing. So I said, okay, fine, take me through the master's program, and within a semester, I aced all the classes, and the professor said, well, this is a mistake. We are wasting her time and my time, so they moved me to the PhD program, right? So, Mola Sua, I was able to finish my PhD, and the other challenge was there were no mumini in that whole town. And so how are we going to do Ashara, how are we going to do Laylatul Qadr, how are we going to do any of these things? So when we left India, we had no idea. Burhani Mullah knew what he was doing. He told Guru Sahib, give them a cassette of my Ashara Wahis and give them a cassette of my Laylatul Qadr Basira. And we are looking at Shehzadi Sakina Bilsa, who calls me to say female, and Abdullah Isa, and like, why is Mullah giving us this? Of course, when we landed in these cities, we realized Mullah knew what was happening, right? And we were very spiritually inclined. So during these major breaks, we traveled to major cities. Our first encounter was a family from Chicago. Sheikh Ismail Bhai Burhani and Manabin, parents of Rashida Ben and Dawoodi Bohra, and they really embraced us. We felt great. We are coming here. We are doing our religious duties. Okay. So after I finished my PhD, I wanted to do my postdoc, and my very supportive husband decided to pack his bag again and move with me, right? Because there was not much of an opportunity in Oxford, Tennessee. So we moved to Maryland because there was a Jamaat there, and Mullah said, go to a place where there is a Jamaat, where you will have some form of social and religious identity and interaction, because PhD was very daunting for me. So we again traveled. Adnan rented a little car, a big U-Haul truck, and we traveled 14 miles, and there was a major storm. I can write a book about that. So we landed in Maryland. We had nobody we knew. So we pulled up in a red roof inn. We spent 2 nights, and we got up the next morning, there was snow. But anyway, I began my postdoctoral training at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, a very prestigious school. And it was a bit of a challenge to get accepted into the postdoctoral program. But I was fortunate because my advisor in Tennessee knew my advisor in Johns Hopkins, and they talked and they said, no, I think she's a good candidate, she's hardworking. She really is very passionate. So that is the other take-home message. You have to be passionate about what you do, and I hope my tone reflects that. So the most important thing was that my advisor, Phil Heater, he believed in me. I succeeded, I published papers, I went to meetings. Now the next step is, am I going to ask Adnan to pack his bag again because I want to get a faculty position? No, I really didn't want to do that. So I had a job opportunity at MD Anderson in Houston. I had job opportunities in Connecticut. But I really wanted to, be in Maryland because there was a religious, a local community, and I thought we could, have a good family life. So I was very fortunate that there was an opening at the National Institute of Health for a scientist position to do genetic research. And I applied, and even though that position was very competitive, I was able to do 4 things. I was able to set up collaborations with Nobel laureates who wrote letters for me to get my postdoctoral position. I made myself totally visible at the meetings. I didn't care who the scientist was. I put myself in their face and I said, "I'm Munira Basra, it's so nice to meet you. I've read your paper." And so I did that. Third thing is that I had excellent mentors, and fourth thing is that I had immense support from my husband, my family, and from the community. So with that, it was very prestigious, I got this tenure track position. So tenure track positions are basically assistant professor positions where you're required to do a certain number of things, and then they promote you to tenure, which is what happens in the academia. And so I was a bit nervous how I was going to do that, because I'm at the world's premier institute doing premier research. You must have seen Anthony Fauci on TV. He's one of those buildings. But with my inspiration, my support from Ola, I started my journey. So it was tough. It was not easy, and I had to prove my educational credentials. I had to set up a teamwork. I had to do marketing, which is most of you what in this business Expo want to do. You have to market. You have to network. So whether you are selling a product, I'm selling my skill set, I'm selling my science. And the same qualities that I need, you also need to succeed in your business, right? No matter what you do in your life, whether you're a chartered accountant or a patent attorney. So of course my educational credentials were accepted by my branch chief. I was able to, how do I set up a team, right? The color of my skin, my religion, identity. Most people will want to go somebody who is established, who is, not the same power as I am. So I was very fortunate because when I was leaving Hopkins to go to NIH, I came across a very smart German postdoc, Oliver Kirscher. And as I was leaving, I said, "Hey, Oli, do you want to join my lab?" And he said, "Sure, Munira, I'm coming working for you." And I was like, this guy would never come work for me because I'm not even generic, forget about being a brand name. So the next thing I knew is, Oli graduates, comes to my lab, sets up the whole lab, and he basically laid the foundation. So anybody who came to my lab, he said, "Munira's kitchen is hot, and if you don't like it, get up, So he really inspired everybody in my lab to work. He was very smart, very motivated. So build your team with the right people and motivate them, right? The next thing is my scientific performance, which I don't go into details. I have peer-reviewed publications, I review grants, and most importantly, I get reviewed every 4 years because I don't write grants. and my reviews have been outstanding. So having satisfied all this, it was really nerve-wracking to put a package together to come out for tenure. So I had to get 17 letters of recommendation. I had to do all my performance. By then, I discovered that, no matter how good or smart or hardworking I have, I need other people to say how smart I am, right? Because only that will take me to my next level. So with that, I was promoted to tenure, and these are the credentials. So of course, education was not a big deal. I had studied at the best schools. Performance was not a big deal. Team building, I was able to do. So right now, my lab, I'll show you a picture, is almost all the members of the UN Security Council, right? I have a guy from Japan, from Taiwan, from Indonesia, from Nepal. So I have a very culturally diverse group. And of course, my last trainee was a Muslim girl who wore a hijab and was very nervous of being accepted by a scientist at NIH. So she wrote to me, I interviewed, and I was like, she really going to make it? And I recruited her, and her performance in my lab over the last summer has been spectacular. So she really has set the role model of what a woman can achieve. A little girl, very short, but very accomplished. So I was able, to do all of this stuff. But most importantly, I was able to set up collaborations with 3 Nobel laureates, right? One from Hopkins, and one from NIH, and one from the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center. And these 3 Nobel laureates had a lot of respect for me. So when I came up for my tenure, I said, will you guys write a letter? And they wholeheartedly agreed to write a letter. So I was really fortunate that that happened. And then in terms of continuing my performance, I get evaluated every 4 years. I just had an evaluation 2 months back. And with Mullah's law, it was glowing. It was outstanding. I was ranked as the top member of my faculty. But the one thing I do want to share today with you is the religious identity. So about 10 years back, I decided to wear hijab. I was wearing American clothes. And I used to wear hijab to work, but I used to take it out in my office. Because I was just afraid of how I would be accepted. So I had done Ruat's photo on my desk, and as I was taking my hijab out, it hit me, okay, Mullah is looking at me, and what am I doing, And at every point of crisis, I go to my spiritual leader and I said, please help me, please help me, Panjaban, please help me, so-and-so, please help me. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. This is dual identity. On one hand, I'm asking God to help me, but on the other hand, I'm not doing what my religious leader would ask me to do, wear a hijab. And at that day, I said, I'm not going to take out my hijab. I just walked into the corridor, and believe me, it was very challenging. But the one remark that my husband made to me as I was driving to work, I said, Adnan, I'm going to wear hijab today at work, and what if they don't accept it? And he said, if they don't accept it, leave the job. Is job more important? Or your identity, your integrity, your character, what's more important? And I was like, okay. He said, you stay at home, I don't really care, right? So that gave me the guts. And I really played a lot of hide and seek for 3 months because I was really afraid of being accepted as a woman of hijab, the only woman of hijab at the whole of NIH, which has 20,000 people, right? So that was a challenge for me, but it really transformed my life. And it transformed my life in one very important way. It told me that if I am good at what I do, I can be confident, nobody can undermine me, right? So I've had the world's best scientists come to me and say, we respected you all our life, but we respect you even now more, because if this is the value you have for your culture and your identity, we can only imagine what you bring to your science. So my peer review publications have been very highly ranked, but this is not about religion, this is about standing up for what you think is right, and you cannot let anybody influence you to change for the perception of the other people. You have to do what is right. So I'm not here, trying to do Amir or a suburb or anything like that, but I do want to share this very personal story. The other advantage was I became a symbol of diversity and equality. So every conference, they needed a woman, they needed a minority, they needed a woman of color. So I got more invitations in the last 10 years at international conferences that would never have even looked at me because they want to portray me as a symbol of diversity. And heck, who cares? I'm going to take it to my advantage, right? So in fact, tomorrow I'll be going to Boston for a very big cancer conference, and I probably would have never been invited unless I was wearing hijab. And I'm really, truly honored and privileged. that I got this opportunity. So the take-home lesson to the women over here: do what is right, do what is spiritually right, stand up for your character. Okay? So this is where my journey on cancer begins. So in 2004, when the Masjid Iftitah happened in Washington, we have a Siafat at my house. This is my husband right here. And after the whole Siafat got over, Tasneem Pensab was also here. And I want to share this conversation I had with Mullah. So Mullah looks at me and says, I want you to change the course of your research to focus on causes of cancer and not the cure. And obviously I paused and I said, why is Mullah asking me to do this? And then Mullah looked at me and said, do you want to know why I'm asking you to do this? And I said, gee, Mullah, I want you to know. I mean, like, I spent my whole 7 years on working on cure, and now you like suddenly want me to change. And he looked at me very politely, had a big smile on his face, and he said, let us work on causes, because if you work on causes and we don't let cancer happen, why do we need to cure? Oh, yeah, that's revealing, comes from my spiritual reader, right? And indeed, after what Mullah said to me in 2004, this is 2022, in 2009, the whole research community of cancer decided that we are wasting our time trying to find a treatment. We are going to go after the causes, right? So I could change my direction of my research to find the causes. So I'm going to give you a little, like 1 minute, I'm sorry for boring you, but I have to, right? Because this is what I do for a living. So the statistics of cancer are quite worldwide, very high. The deaths are also very high. And most importantly, what I study, I want to convey to you. So if you look at the panel on the left, those are the chromosomes. Each one of us has 23 chromosomes, right? We have 2 copies of the chromosome. Now, in a cancer cell, if you see the colors, blue, green, they're quite uniform on that side. But if you look at the cell on this side, which is a carcinoma, cancer cell, the genome is messed up. You have a little bit of red combined with green, green combined with red. I know it looks pretty on a radar, but it's not pretty for a cell and for your life, right? But this is what happens in cancer. You have chromosomal instability, right? So this is what my lab studies. So the focus of my research is the causes and consequences of chromosomal instability, and we use budding yeast, the yeast that makes your bread, not because I love bread, but because the genes in yeast are highly conserved to human beings. We use yeast, we use human models, we use mouse models, and we've been quite successful. So this is a protein that my lab studies. So this is a chromosome in blue. Sempe is the red dot there. It is a constriction on the chromosome. And so for the last 24 years, I have studied that protein, and Mullah was absolutely right. Go after the causes. And what we have recently discovered in the last 3-4 years, which is really going to be a very big prominent role in my life, is that this protein is overexpressed in most cancers, and more so in triple-negative breast cancers and other women's cancers which are really deadly, right? So the idea is, what is causing this protein to go up, and can we use this protein to come up with chemotherapeutic targets? But again, I'm not interested in the chemotherapy, I'm interested in the causes. So we have run into a lot of fantastic worldwide collaborations on triple-negative breast cancer, small cell lung cancer. I mean, the list goes on, but I don't want to bore you with it. But this is what we study. So this is my lab member, he's Prashant Mishra, and I absolutely enjoy. I'm more of a bench scientist. I wear my lab coat, I go to the lab, I look at their primary results. I don't want massage data sent to me where they filter out what they don't want to show me. This is, the next slide is my lab. As I said, UN Security Council, I have members from every nation, which makes me learn the skills that Dr. Nafisa talked about, because I somehow feel that my lab is like a little psychiatric clinic, because every culture is different, everybody communicates differently. So I read on, a Japanese had 1 hour, and a Nepali had another hour, and a Taiwanese had another hour, but they are awesome. I mean, I wouldn't be here without them. And then, so introducing how I can take my career to the next step in serving. Breast cancer is the leading cause of cancer amongst women, and most of these cancers are being diagnosed very late, right? So with the help of Dr. Amir Gumbera, who's in this audience, his cancer in women. I don't want to go into the details. You will be hearing something from Amir and me in the near future. And even in London, Mullah and Musa were very intent on us initiating the program. So we are not planning to diagnose you, we are not planning to treat you, we are not planning to do any of that stuff. but having a very important genetic background, what I'm really interested in is, why are women in our community being diagnosed that way? Are we missing out the mutations that would help us get diagnosed earlier? And are the mutations that we have in our community unique to our community? And can we make a cancer-specific panel for women, starting with breast cancer and going? And I have the resources to do whole genome sequencing. So the idea would be, you take 10 patients, who've gone through the regular genetic test. They don't have any predisposition. So let's sequence their genomes to figure out what is it in our Wome community. We are a very inbred community, and let's find the needles in the haystack. So I request all of you to pray for Ameba, myself, and a few other people that are going to join this, that we are able to launch the same principles of Islam and Deen that our beloved spiritual leader says. The spiritual leader tells us exactly what to do. And if those are the principles you observe in your life and in your professional career, you are bound to succeed. So I offer my shukr to Burhani Mullah, to Mufaddal Mullah, who have had a very meaty nazar on me and my career, and I have truly been blessed. I also want to offer my shukr to Bu Sahiba, to Sharaf bin Sahiba Nama Majdobu. Most importantly, Shehzadi Husaina bin Saab knew me since I was a little kid. And I still remember going to Sefi Mail and telling Shehzadi Saab, "Maine scientist banu, maine scientist banu." So Shehzadi Saab has been monitoring my career throughout, and I'm entirely grateful to her. Thank you, Father Marin sir, for coming. I'm really appreciative of you coming. Shehzada Idris Bhai Saab and Majbin Saab have always, held our hand at every stage. And most importantly, Ubay Bhai Saab and Tasneem Bhai Saab are the ones who drew us closer to Mola. We had no way to get closer to Mola. And they were there in my house 2 nights before, toughing it out, getting us ready for the ziyafat. I also want to thank Janab Begum Bhai Saab, who's a very big role. I want to thank my husband, Adnan Basrai. Let's give him a cheer, because without him, none of this would be possible. Right? I mean, he's my best friend, he's my partner in crime and success and everything. Right? So I'm immensely grateful to you, Adnan. I'm grateful to my parents on both sides, Yusuf Basrai, Husaina Basrai, my parents who are pictures I showed you, the entire families, my mentors, my teams, my colleagues. I want to also thank the Chicago Jamaat for this mashkal and nurturing this venture, the Burhani women, the Talibatul Kuliya, the Anjuman Sefi, the volunteers. And of course, I would absolutely not have come here without the invitation from my best friend, Mullah Shirin bin Sherawala, who's always believed in me and my career, and Rashida bin Boxwala, who's been my friend for the last 37 years. So thank you very much, and I will be around today, and I'll be happy to take any questions. Okay, thank you.
Alhamdulillah, we've listened to some very, very empowering seminars over the weekend by some very inspiring women within our community. And we've learned about nurturing our mental health, nurturing our professional growth, nurturing our businesses, nurturing our babies, nurturing our bodies, and now, keeping with the Mashtal theme, I'm going to talk about nurturing our aesthetic. So let's start with a question. When you look at someone, what characteristic or feature do you observe to guess their age? Can someone give me an answer? Their eyes? Their hair? Skin, right. So we all have a desire to be attractive. It's human nature. People feel better about themselves when they think they're attractive to others. And in today's society, facial attractiveness is judged based on youthful characteristics. The appearance of aging past the prime of life becomes an assault to one's self-esteem and confidence. As a result, we spend a lot of time, emotional energy, and money trying to improve our physical appearance, and especially our skin, to look beautiful. So this is the agenda for the presentation. I'm going to talk about the aging process, UVA and UVB damage, preventing photo damage particularly, fixing photo damage, and long-term solutions. And so let's talk about what accelerates aging. All right, let's see. So aging can be referenced in two ways, chronological aging and biological aging. When someone asks you, what's your age? And the number you give them, that's the chronological age. It's how long you've existed in this world. It's the time, it's a number of years that have passed since your birth to present. Biological aging is a little different. It's how much damage our cells and tissues accumulate over time. So for instance, you may be 30 years old, but if you live a very sedentary lifestyle, you have very poor nutrition, your biological age is going to be greater than 30. Okay, now much of the external damage that I'm going to talk about today that contributes to the aging process manifests itself on the skin. Some factors like sun exposure, diet, hydration, and lifestyle are just examples of how, that aging gets, I guess how it speeds up the aging process over time. So this presentation will focus largely on sun exposure, its effects on the physiology of our skin, and how it can lead to the premature aging of our skin, and in some very serious cases, skin cancer. So let's expound on the types of ultraviolet radiation our skin absorbs, but first, let's go ahead and have a look at the 3 layers that make up our skin. So the first layer is the epidermis. That's the external layer, it's what everyone sees. The dermis is the second layer of our skin. It makes up 90% of our skin's, 90% of its thickness. It contains the collagen and elastin proteins that actually provide the scaffolding that gives our skin strength and flexibility. The hypodermis is the fatty layer, and that's the third layer of our skin. So that helps regulate body temperatures, cushions muscle, bone, and much more. I'm going to play a video on how aging occurs. So this is the UVB rays and what happens when they first get absorbed by our skin. So pay attention to the epidermis. This video is going to show you what happens when UVB radiation hits our skin and penetrates the epidermal tissue. So UV radiation that affects our skin is composed of 2 types of rays, UVA and UVB. When these rays penetrate our skin, they begin to cause mutations in skin cell DNA, and that's actually, further along, this is what actually, causes skin cancer. So let's talk about what stands between us and the threat of DNA damage. When UVB rays penetrate our epidermal tissue, particularly UVB, this is what I'm talking about right now, our bodies begin to produce more melanin because when your epidermis is exposed to UV radiation, your melanocytes become hyperactive and start producing more melanin because melanin absorbs sunlight. So a tan, when you're out on the beach, you've spent like 8 hours at the beach and you come home and you look browner than normal, is actually an indication that skin damage has occurred, and now the body is preparing itself for further UV exposure. So it's a coping mechanism. It's not a good thing, and I know, we all like getting tanned, because, no? Okay. I guess not our community. Okay. Now a sunburn, on the other hand, is indicative of extreme UVB damage. In this scenario, what actually happens is the skin cells in the epidermal region die, and the outermost layer of the skin begins to peel. So let's see. I'm sorry, my slides are a little mixed up here. So I'm supposed to... Okay, so that's what a sunburn looks like. Now, the short-term effects of the UVB exposure are generally, present themselves as like a tan or a sunburn, for instance. But eventually, the skin develops brown dyschromia, such as sunspots, solar lentigines or solar lentigos, melasma, actinic keratosis, just regular keratosis, and even textural damage. So on this slide here, I have a couple of pictures. The first one is showing gradated pigment on a woman, and that's melasma. It's actually hormonal. But women that have melasma, unfortunately, there's no cure for melasma. When they're exposed, it actually gets aggravated even more when you're exposed to UV radiation. Freckles and solar lentigines are short-term, but will eventually, develop into more, pronounced sunspots and keratosis, as you see on the larger picture. Now let's talk about UVA exposure. I'm going to play this video. It starts out with a sunburn, sorry, so we'll just wait a little bit. Okay, so that's a sunburn. That's very, very, that's actually a very aggressive, symptom when your skin begins to blister. So this is what happens to the dermis when it gets exposed to UVB. Sorry, UVA. So as you see, the scaffolding that makes up the dermal layer of the skin begins to break down because the UVA rays actually have a longer wavelength. They penetrate the dermal layer and they break down these proteins that create the scaffolding, the collagen and elastin, particularly collagen and elastin fibers. The damaging effects of the UVA exposure are generally seen long-term as the skin begins to rebuild incorrectly with depleted collagen reserves and therefore loses integrity and develops laxity and wrinkles. So these are, very pronounced aging symptoms, right? But now on the next slide, I'll show you what happens. Now, this picture right here is a picture of a trucker that has spent 28 years of his life driving. And take a closer look at his left side, the driving side. This is what happens when your skin is continuously exposed to UVA. The effects creep up on you, slowly. They're not very apparent, but as you can see, this is a very, very compelling picture and compelling evidence of UVA damage to our skin and how it can manifest itself long term. As you can see, that side of his face has developed more texture. It's very lax. The proteins have broken down. His skin basically has lost laxity. So let's do a quick recap of the things that I just spoke about. The difference between UVA and UVB. In the image, you can see the different types of wavelengths. UVC, doesn't affect our skin because it doesn't bypass the ozone layer. UVB will penetrate the epidermal tissue, and UVA, the dermal tissue. So let's talk about the best way we can avoid photoaging. Naturally, the best solution is to stay indoors and not go out in the sun. But that's not a very practical solution because, due to our lifestyles, we will sometimes tend to spend a great deal of time outdoors. And I should also mention here that sunlight in healthy doses is actually good for our skin because UV actually stimulates the production of vitamin D, which is an essential vitamin, we require for our health. The ideal time to be outside in order to get a healthy dose of sunlight, however, which will not damage your skin, is between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. So if you're a person that enjoys going out for morning walks, make sure you're timing this correctly. Don't go out at 10 o'clock or noon, for a walk because you're going to be exposing your skin to even further UVA damage. You can start by making some very small changes to how you dress. When you're outside, make sure you're wearing protective clothing. This is, Rida is a great solution for us. So I'm very thankful for that. And if you're going to be spending the day at the beach, for instance, wear a hat, wear a good sunblock, and don't forget to reapply it every 2 hours to exposed areas. So let's talk about the differences between sunblock and sunscreen. Now, these terms are generally used interchangeably when referring to any product that contain SPF, which stands for sun protective factor. But you should know that they're not created equal. So a sunscreen actually, is composed of chemicals such as avobenzone and octisalate, which actually allow both the UVA and UVB to penetrate your skin. It stimulates a chemical reaction within the epidermal and dermal tissue, and then releases the heat from that chemical reaction back to the atmosphere. It just naturally dissipates from your skin. I think it just depends on preference, but you really want to look for something that says sunblock and contains zinc oxide and titanium dioxide because these are actual physical blockers. They're considered mineral sunscreens, and they will actually deflect away the UV light from your skin, preventing it from entering it, and they'll provide you better protection long term. So now how do you reverse this damage? So I know that most of us have grown up without being properly educated on the effects of, sun damage and the dangers of, exposing your skin to too much sun. In ethnic communities, I feel, especially Indian communities, African American communities, there are these preconceived notions that you really cannot sustain any type of skin damage because of UV, because of our darker skin tone. Unfortunately, that's not true. So, as from all the pictures that I've just shown you on the slides, as you can see, the damaging effects of the UVA and UVB exposure can really creep up on us with age. So the good news is, I guess, well, this is where my speech ends, so I'm gonna have to just wing it from here. Okay, we have advanced medical aesthetics nowadays. Just the way modern medicine has evolved, we have modern aesthetics. Medical aesthetics essentially just stands for medical procedures that help, reverse a lot of the UV damage our skin incurs. And remember, these are all extrinsic damaging symptoms. They're not intrinsic. So we can only fix the stuff that's on the outside. We can help rebuild those collagen scaffolds and collagen fibers, the depleted, reserves of the collagen elastin that our skin has because of the damage that's been sustained over time. So non-cancerous actinic keratosis, melasma, flat seborrheic keratosis, solar lentiginous, brown gradated and non-gradated pigments such as melasma and dyschromia in general can all be safely treated with advanced laser skin resurfacing protocols. Using ablative, fractionally ablative, and non-ablative options can help rejuvenate your skin because so the way these treatments work, they're medical grade because we're using medical grade devices to create ablative points within your skin, creating microthermal zones, injury points essentially, very controlled injury points within the epidermal and dermal tissue to bring about the generation of new skin cells. Because anytime you introduce injury to your body, what happens? You heal, right? So when you fall down, you get a scrape, that basically stimulates a wound healing process. It initiates a wound healing process that creates a proliferation of new skin cells. And so this is what we're essentially doing, when we perform these treatments such as RF radiofrequency microneedling, ablative lasers, non-ablative lasers, broadband light that basically utilize different filters to try and bring about bulk heating of the tissue, the epidermal and dermal tissue, by driving energy deep into the skin while utilizing different filters to target the specific depths where the damage has occurred. So less invasive options can include regular microdermabrasion, physician-grade chemical peels containing skin brighteners such as hydroquinone, brighteners like kojic acid, well, non-medical brighteners like kojic and tranexamic acid. And I actually have a collection of photos here. Some of these are our clients and some of these are not. They're from other clinics that we're connected with. So as you can see, that first image is a woman that's has a little bit of freckling and some solar, lentigos all over her cheeks. And you can see the difference after just a couple of BBL treatments. Those are broadband light treatments. The picture underneath that is an older woman that actually has actinic keratosis and some very, very pronounced solar lentiginous. Now, the one on the right is probably a little bit more profound. This was a combination of broadband light treatment with fractional hybrid laser resurfacing. So the epidermal damage was fixed by the treatment that was performed by essentially an IPL, intense pulse light, also known as broadband light. And then fractionated ablative and non-ablative laser wavelengths were utilized to actually, bring about the ablation and microthermal zones within his epidermal and dermal tissue to start regenerating the skin. So you can see that the rhytids around his perioral area are a little bit less pronounced in the second picture. This is an RF microneedling procedure, and RF microneedling essentially just induces neocollagenesis and elastogenesis. It uses microneedles with two bipolar electrodes, to spread heat, thermal energy, and create coagulative points within the dermal tissue to start, bringing about that dermal regeneration to essentially, produce healthy collagen elastin fibers. And I think that's a great picture. It shows how her skin laxity has improved, her textural, there's been such great textural improvement in that photo. This is a broadband light photofacial that was performed to remove, very excessive pigment that manifested as, we weren't quite sure actually, because this seemed like it was cancerous. But when you assess these skin concerns under a Woods lamp, your provider would be able to tell you whether or not these are benign lesions or, they're non-cancerous or whether they're cancerous or benign. This was a broadband light treatment performed to lift up the pigment. The pigment generally takes on like a very coffee ground texture afterwards, and the skin heals over a course of 10 to 14 days. And the epidermal tissue will naturally just flake off to replace that top layer of the skin. This is an RF microneedling procedure. This is actually a client of ours. And these were the changes in her skin after just one treatment. We do recommend doing these in a series of 3. I actually have updated pictures. She came in for a follow-up treatment. We performed her second treatment on Thursday. And I had already turned in my slides by then, so I don't have the updated picture here. But you can come and ask me and I'll show you. It's on my phone. As you see, the rhytids are a little bit less pronounced, perioral, laxity. The submental region has, dramatically improved, is tightened, because this is what happens, when you bring about dermal injury points. Your skin basically, because it's trying to heal, that elastin and collagen is going to start tightening the skin. There's also production of hyaluronic acid. These are, this is naturally produced by your skin, anytime it, incurs any type of injury, I suppose, and it gives you this really nice glow and brightening effect. So you can see her epidermal, the top of her skin looks brighter as well in the second picture. This is a micro laser peel procedure. It's a fully ablative procedure that was basically performed in a very controlled measure. We really can't ablate, all the way down to the epidermal depth. So this was done to improve the appearance of her freckling, I suppose. This is another RF microneedling procedure, and you can see such amazing tightening around the perioral area, periocular area, and just in general, her skin health has improved so much. This one's another picture. This is a full-field erbium resurfacing, also called tunable resurfacing laser. This is very, very amazing, but it also required about 3 to 4 weeks of healing. So when a patient undergoes a treatment such as this, they usually go home, slap on Aquaphor for the next 2 weeks because they're a bloody mess. We literally go in and take off layers and layers and layers of their skin to try and correct that epidermal damage. So you can see that correction in the second picture. I'm very, very proud of this picture. This is a client of ours that underwent a halo procedure. You can see the dyschromia on the left. She presented with melasma on her forehead. She had, fat pads under her eyes. She's just a really stressed person. She had a lot of actinic breakouts around her chin, and generally just a lot of dyschromia all over her face. This is my client, and the second picture was taken at day 10. This is a picture she took this photo and sent this to us on day 10. And notice the improvement in her skin tone and just how bright it looks. Now, the brightness will eventually, wane over time, because the initial brightness is just because those ablated pockets that have been created by the epidermal damage that has been sustained by the ablative laser that we use will naturally fill with hyaluronic acid. Again, your skin naturally produces that to kind of, as that, tissue remodeling begins and the correction begins. Hyaluronic acid is the first thing your body naturally basically produces, to fill those ablated gaps within your skin. So, now, I've shown you a bunch of pictures, talked about, all these different types of treatments, that are done in the modern, aesthetic world today. They involve thermal coagulation, resurfacing, and broadband light. But what do these terms really mean, So the premise, really, the gist of this is behind all of these medical aesthetic procedures that involve lasers and RF devices is essentially to introduce coagulation. Now, coagulation by means of mechanical and thermally injury points. Ablative procedures, they remove damaged epidermal tissue. So when I talk about like a fractionated laser or a micro laser peel, for instance, it's just addressing the top of your skin, the epidermal tissue that we first spoke about. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, that's also where a lot of this damage manifests, UVB and UVA damage, UVB damage specifically. And then we also do full field resurfacing, treatments as well as fractional methods. The idea behind fractional methods is we're still utilizing the same lasers, but instead of ablating the entire surface of the skin, 100% density of it, we go in and do it fractionally, by percentage. So we'll do it at 10%, 20%, 30 or 40%, or even 50%. Essentially, you leave behind the columns of the epidermal and dermal tissue intact. You don't want to damage all your skin and fully resurface your skin because Nowadays, with as more and more research develops into these, procedures and devices, the doctors and surgeons have found that when you leave some parts of the skin intact, they actually those pillars act as like columns that support the rest of the skin as it heals. As the proliferation of new skin cells begin and all of that, as that wound healing process begins. Those columns that are left intact will actually support that tissue, and allow it to heal even better. So each of these treatments create controlled zones of ablation and coagulation within the epidermal and dermal tissue. Microscopic thermal zones bring about proliferation of new cells as the wound healing process begins. And the choice of the treatment that you will undergo will generally depend on your skin type, your age, concerns, and the amount of downtime that you really have. Certain procedures will involve prolonged erythema and post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. So always consult with your provider to learn about the benefit and side effects of these procedures. Okay, now, not all of us are, great candidates for these procedures. You may lack the means, the money, or just, you may not have a provider, that's willing to help you. So let's talk about some alternatives, Our skin tone specifically, because we have a tendency to produce more melanin every time our skin is exposed to heat. The procedures have to be, performed in a very, very careful and controlled manner. So women of our skin tone will typically have to be put on some type of like a pigment suppressor, tyrosinase inhibitors like kojic acid or hydroquinone that's prescribed prior to getting your treatment done, so you don't, have any hyperpigmentation, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation that occurs afterwards. So these are some alternatives to just, something you can do at home. You can incorporate certain medical grade ingredients into your regime, your skincare routine. Make sure you're using a retinol or some kind of pigment suppressor, if you're constantly out in the sun, so you can prevent like long-term UVA damage. Pigment suppressors that I mentioned could be hydroquinone, hexylresorcinol, kojic acid, arbutin, and tranexamic acid. And retinol specifically, just create like, so I truly feel like every woman above the age of 30 should be using a retinol nightly. Long-term use of retinol has actually shown to prevent aging because retinol induces collagen production. The way it works is it's going to irritate your skin. It's actually a derivative of vitamin A. It irritates the top layer of your skin and continuously keeps signaling the dermal tissue to allow the production of more skin cells. And so this is naturally, intrinsic aging, meaning like the natural aging process is happening because we're aging, so our metabolism is not the same anymore, right? And so our skin is not turning over as quickly as it should. So a younger child, for instance, like if you look at a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, even a 10-year-old, you'll see how radiant and bright their skin is. And it doesn't matter how much sun damage is sustained when they're out in the sun, they heal so quickly afterwards. And this is because of their cellular turnover. Now my last slide, I think I'm a little out of time here, but I'm going to talk about, I showed you all of those images of keratosis and pigmentation, dyschromia that manifest in the skin. But let's talk about how you can actually spot signs of melanoma. So you need to just remember A, B, C, D, E. A stands for asymmetry. So if that lesion has an asymmetrical appearance, you need to consult a doctor because that's a red flag. If you have a brown spot or a mole which has a blurry edge, B for border, again, you need to get it checked. C stands for color. It should not have a gradated color. It should be singular. It should have only one color. If it looks gradated at any point in your life, you need to get it checked. D stands for diameter. It should not be larger than a pencil eraser. And E stands for evolution. So if you see that it's continuously growing or expanding, you definitely need to have it looked at, because this could be a sign of skin cancer. So I'm going to finish the presentation on a note that, I'm very thankful to have this platform. But I also want to mention that within our community, I really feel like women don't, this is like a secondary need. A lot of women feel like this is not important, but remember, your outward appearance is what people look at when you first meet them. So if there's something that's bothering you, get it looked at, and get it corrected. It's and it might just boost your confidence. And if you feel better about your outside, you'll actually start feeling better inside as well. So that's it, yeah. Thank you so much.
And I have my pleasure to introduce Dr. Insia Gumberawala. She is a graduate from Rush University and she did her pediatric residency at Louis Children, Northwestern. She has her own pediatric practice. She's also a lactation consultant. She practices breastfeeding medicine and also fourth trimester care. So I think good for you to collaborate with her. Huh? So Dr. Insia Gumberawala.
Thank you so much. Testing. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello everyone, respected guests, Sahibo. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm so excited to be speaking at such an amazing event. Mashtal, this is an amazing opportunity for women. And I'm so honored to be asked to share my knowledge with you. So some of you might be wondering, what is this liquid gold in her title? So imagine a liquid that is able to be tailored to a person's genetics specifically. It's able to adapt to a person's environment, and it provides nutrition, immunity, medicine, and vitamins and minerals. So this liquid I'm actually speaking of is breast milk. And I hope that through my talk, I'm able to show you why myself and so many others refer to breast milk as liquid gold. So first, let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm Dr. Insia. I am a physician, pediatrician, and international board certified lactation consultant. And I have developed a passion for really helping patients feel more supported and feel more comfortable with healthcare information. And I'm also the mother of 2 boys, and I can say that when I had my family, when I became a mom, my perspective of medicine really drastically changed. So I was able to really feel how unsupported new parents can feel at times and see firsthand some of the healthcare gaps that new parents feel. I also realized how little pediatricians are taught in training about breastfeeding, and this kind of really pushed me to further specialize. And with Mola's Dua, then I went on to start a practice called Kind Ma MD. The focus of my practice is actually to spend more focused time with families, more time with families in the comfort of their home. And I practice breastfeeding medicine and fourth trimester care, which is the care of mom and baby in the comfort of their home. So mom and baby postpartum immediately up until about 2 years of life, with a focus on maternal mental health as well. And it's been an incredibly rewarding experience, and this care that I provide is to supplement the pediatric care and obstetric care that they're already receiving. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a roadmap to what I'm going to cover in this short talk. I hope to increase your awareness generally and expose you to a wide variety of topics. Some of you might have firsthand experience with breastfeeding, and whether or not you do, I hope that you'll come away from this talk with awareness that will help families feel more supported. So first, let's look at current recommendations for breastfeeding, both in the US and worldwide. So the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Center for Disease Control, and the WHO, the World Health Organization, they all agree that breastfeeding should be exclusive for the first 6 months. Then complementary feeding, so solids, should be introduced alongside breastfeeding. And so the CDC says until breastfeeding should be continued 12 months and older. And then the WHO and the AAP agree that, they, in their wording, they say for 2 years or beyond. So there are ways in which formula is similar to breast milk. They both provide energy, hydration, nutrients, so babies will grow with whichever milk that they're provided. But despite advances in how baby formula is manufactured and all the new advances, unfortunately, it doesn't come close to matching the health benefits that breast milk can provide. So this chart just shows a variety of things that breast milk can provide, but let's take a closer look. This is a brief look at breast milk under the microscope. So as you can see, a huge variety of shapes, sizes, movement, because every drop of breast milk is actually alive with antibodies and white blood cells to protect against illness, nucleotides that affect gene expression, hormones that promote bonding and regulate appetite and sleep patterns, stem cells that may support organ development and repair of the baby, beneficial bacteria that protect baby's digestive system, prebiotics that support a healthy gut environment, elements to support the baby's brain, nervous system, and eyes develop, and enzymes to support the digestive and immune systems. And we still don't have the data to fully understand the protective elements of breastfeeding because breast milk is just so complex. But one thing that we do know is that the alive components of breast milk cannot be replicated because they are made specifically for the baby by the mom. Another benefit of breast milk over formula is that it's a living fluid. So it actually is able to adapt to your baby's changing circumstances. So say mom or baby become ill, the mother's body can actually make more white blood cells and antibodies that travel into the milk and help fight infection. So in this picture, you can actually see on day 2 of mother's illness, the milk is a richer yellow color. And so it's actually richer in immune benefits, similar to early milk, the colostrum. So what are benefits of breast milk to baby? So let's kind of summarize a whole bunch of them. And this is just to name a few, but breastfed babies have lower risk of infections, including lower respiratory infections, ear infections, diarrhea and vomiting. They have lower risk of asthma, eczema, childhood obesity, type 2 diabetes, childhood leukemia, sudden infant death syndrome, and breastfed babies also have improved cognitive development, IQ, eyesight, and teeth alignment, and they're exposed to a variety of tastes. So one really interesting quote from the WHO, the World Health Organization, is if there was just a modest increase in breastfeeding rates worldwide, that we could prevent up to 10% of all deaths of children under 5. So to me, that blew me away. So what about benefits to mom? Most people forget to think about maternal benefits to breastfeeding, but they actually, breastfeeding has both immediate and long-term benefits to mothers. Immediate benefits include reduced maternal bleeding after delivery, helping the uterus go back to a normal shape and size, facilitating weight loss to go back to pre-pregnancy health, reduction of stress, and delayed ovulation, and very importantly, a decreased risk of postpartum depression. And additionally, with continued breastfeeding, it reduces mom's risk of obesity, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, cancers such as breast, ovarian, uterine, endometrial cancers, and what's more is the longer a mom chooses to breastfeed, the more protection it offers her against these conditions. So that all sounds wonderful, but let's look at what our data is showing us. So in the United States, 85% of moms intend to breastfeed. But the data at 6 months shows that only 25% of babies are exclusively breastfed at 6 months. So that's a huge drop. And what's more is that at 1 year, only 35% of babies are breastfed to any extent. So just one interesting additional study that estimated that in the US, if 90% of US families could breastfeed exclusively for just those 6 months, the United States would save $13 billion per year and prevent an excess of 911 deaths, mostly in infants. So let's take a closer look at why this isn't happening. I think this chart does a really good job of showing that the barriers to breastfeeding are a vicious cycle. Families do not give up breastfeeding just because they didn't try hard enough. I like to tell my parents, I have yet to meet a mom who hasn't cried about breastfeeding because it is hard, and there are a lot of things that can make it even harder. Primarily, I see lack of information and lots of misinformation, even given by healthcare providers. Expectations that do not meet reality, inadequate family support, and employment issues that are causing families to give up breastfeeding before they meet their goals. So there is so much information and misinformation on breastfeeding, sometimes even provided by healthcare providers. And so many breastfeeding problems could actually be prevented if families receive appropriate education before giving birth, so before problems arrive. And adjusting expectations of what is normal versus abnormal with feeding can be really helpful. Mothers should not be encouraged to push through pain. Pain is usually a sign that there's something wrong. And sometimes it can cause tissue damage, which is much harder to fix later once it happens. So moms with pain should be directed to seek a professional help immediately. Also, the volume of milk that a newborn needs initially is very, very small, about the size of a marble on day 1. And babies can feed very frequently, including through the night, so a minimum of 10 to 12 times a day. But that's really where it starts, so it could be much more frequently than that. And if families are not counseled about this beforehand, a lot of times they think that there's a problem and introduce formula. There are times when formula is necessary as a supplement, so prescribed by a provider. And so sometimes, babies lose too much weight, or there's a delay in milk production. And in these cases, moms need to be counseled to continue to express milk from their breast, because if they don't, it's a basic case of supply and demand. So when we remove more milk, then we make more milk. And so that's a really important signal to send our bodies to make more milk. So two really important resources that I love for learning more about breastfeeding, so kellymom.com and firstdroplets.com. Those are great ways to kind of fill your breastfeed, or prepare yourself with breastfeeding education before the baby comes, or even during. So in many situations, mothers are incorrectly instructed to pump and discard their milk, or even stop breastfeeding entirely. And most commonly, these scenarios involve giving medications, radiology and testing procedures, surgery involving anesthesia. I've also had patients, though, tell me that their esthetician or their masseuse told me I need to discard my milk for 24 hours after I get a massage or a facial. So that is absolutely not the case. And there are very few situations that you actually need to discard milk or stop breastfeeding. And two helpful resources for this to check are Infant Risk Center and trashthepumpanddump.com. So both of those are extremely helpful, and it's really important to check before you discard that liquid gold. So just a little bit more emphasis on cancer screening. So women do not need to skip routine cancer screening, especially breast cancer screening, while breastfeeding. So all radiologic modalities, so all the screening measures, are safe during breastfeeding. And it is important to note that on the radiologic studies, the lactating breast, the breastfeeding breast, does look different. So it can be helpful to express or breastfeed prior to the study. And sometimes the mom might need an additional screening procedure, but it's still really important to get your screening done if you're still breastfeeding. So one major barrier to breastfeeding, and in general, a huge condition that comes up postpartum, is maternal mental health. So many people don't know that postpartum anxiety and depression is the most common complication of childbirth. So I'll say that again, the most common complication of childbirth, affecting 1 in 5 women. And the COVID pandemic has actually made it even more common because it's cut us off from our usual support structures. And so usually moms can see symptoms present over the first 2 to 3 months postpartum, but it actually can present up until a year postpartum. And it's really important to pay attention to these feelings because they don't only affect mom, they also affect baby's health. So including developmental milestones, risk of developing depression and anxiety disorders, ability to self-regulate and self-soothe, and also overall health of the baby. So, and it can affect mom's ability to respond to baby's needs and affect milk production. It's a topic that's so underdiagnosed, often not talked about, gets brushed off. And often people think of a mom who's constantly crying, very tearful, but postpartum depression and anxiety can present in so many different ways. So it's very common to have intrusive thoughts about moms who feel like, I'm gonna harm my baby, or my baby is gonna die, or they feel it, or they have these fits of rage. So all of those are common ways that postpartum depression and anxiety can present, but people don't know about it and people don't talk about it. It takes time to get in with a doctor who is able to then create a referral and then another referral to a psychiatrist. And hours can seem like days when you have these conditions, so it's really important to just get treatment right away. So if you find that these thoughts or feelings are affecting a mom's ability to function, these are just some resources to help find a therapist. Going to your OB-GYN or your pediatrician can also be really helpful. They can have resources too. And then if a mom is having thoughts of self-harm or suicidal thoughts, that is an emergency. So they need to be directed to call a crisis hotline or go to the ER right away. And like I said, these conditions are just so common and they're often overlooked. So briefly, let's talk about employment issues. Many studies have linked countries that have longer paid maternity leave with increased rates of breastfeeding. So that's not surprising to me at all. But it's, I think about my own experience going back to work just after a few short weeks, and I see my friends and family and patients having to do that. It is an extremely difficult thing, and it's a really hard adjustment. And there are some laws in the United States to protect breastfeeding women, but many women are not aware of their rights, but then also they're maybe embarrassed to advocate for themselves. So it's really important to know your rights. So in the United States, breastfeeding moms are legally required to have break time for pumping without a cut in pay. They're legally required to have a private, non-restroom space for pumping. So that's a huge thing, actually. A lot of employers give them the restroom to use, and nobody wants to go and express milk in the restroom. And finally, legally, moms are required to have a space where they can safely store pumped milk. So it's really important to know your rights. So I hope this talk has helped you see why I refer to breast milk as liquid gold. There are countless benefits to mom and baby. However, there are many, many barriers that are causing families to stop breastfeeding before they meet their goals. And one of the major things that we can do is really fight misinformation with evidence-based medicine and real information and education. So on a more personal note, starting this practice has been so rewarding for me in so many ways. I always thought after residency I would follow a traditional path of joining a practice, a pediatric practice. But this practice has allowed me to have a better work-life balance. And I still have so much to learn about business, but for me, it's been so rewarding because I've been able to create work on a creative solution to a very, very big problem, or at least I believe is a very big problem. So thank you so much. I want to thank Mola, who has made this whole journey, everything in my life possible, and especially friends, and all of whom give my life meaning. So thank you so much, and I've listed my contact information here, so please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you so much.
Sarabin Kalim is going to present a talk on how to overcome exhaustion. It's a balancing act, right? Okay.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome guests and respected Sahiba. My name is Sara Kalimi, and I'm a PhD candidate at Rosalind Franklin University of Medicine and Science. I'm a neuroscientist, and my work focuses on how the machinery inside neurons are disrupted in early stages of Alzheimer's disease. I started this journey after I got married, and with the help and support of my husband and my loving family, my time here has been quite rewarding, but also quite stressful. I would like to share with you what I have learned, and I'm still learning on how to cope with stress and maintain a work-life balance. I must apologize. As a scientist, I have a tendency to use science as my example, but what I hope is I can provide a platform that can be applied to everyone here. And with that, I'd like to share a personal story about a stressor that most people here feel, which is the fear of falling behind in achieving one's goals. In 2019, 3 years ago, I was pregnant. It was 2 weeks before my due date, and I was giving a poster presentation at a conference. I was excited and nervous about the data that I was sharing because I had worked on it really hard for the past 6 to 8 months. It was coming up to 4+ hours now, and my feet were hurting, my back was aching, and I couldn't do it anymore. But there was still a line of people who were interested in my project. So I apologized to them, I sat down, took a deep breath, and reflected. I had worked so hard, but I was so dizzy and exhausted and overwhelmed. I was pregnant, and I was grateful for that. And I was preparing myself physically and mentally for having a newborn in our lives. But I was afraid I was going to fall behind, and I wasn't going to finish my PhD. So I used that fear and turned it into determination. And in that summer, I told myself, well, I'm going to get a data set for this conference, get another data set prepared for during my maternity leave, and analyze it during my downtime that I thought I was going to have. On top of that, I took multiple leadership roles, one of which I organized. I was constantly planning to take that stress and manage it. I need to work and have some sense of a work-life balance. And this is what I want to share with you all today, and hopefully you will be able to as well. So first, naturally, as a scientist, I wanted to know what that emotional response is doing to my body. So what is stress doing to our body? Stress is actually good for you. In a stressful situation, the body primes ourselves for a flight or fight response. In the later stages of stress, a hormone is released. It is called cortisol, and it keeps you alert and ready for the challenge ahead. However, this isn't the normal state of stress. Your body needs to power down and rest. In sustained long periods of stress, such as chronic stress, so when you're overworked or have increased mental load, it can affect various different systems in our body, such as our cardiovascular system, your heart, leading to hypertension, your gastrointestinal system, your gut, slowing metabolism, leading to weight gain. In women, it affects our hormonal cycles, and also it affects our brain. Specifically, chronic stress, high levels of cortisol, increases your connections in the amygdala, which is your brain's fear center. It disrupts signals in your hippocampus, which is the part of the brain associated with learning, memory, and stress control. And lastly, it affects your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that regulates concentration, decision-making, and judgment. So what I'm trying to say is, chronic stress makes us more fearful, forgetful, and it makes it harder for us to concentrate and solve our problems. And it sets the stage for more serious mental issues like depression, anxiety, and neurodegeneration. One of the causes of chronic stress is being overworked. In 2019, before COVID, the American Psychological Association took a survey and found that 33% of people said work was interfering with their life, and 39% of people said that the heavy workload disrupted their sorry, I messed that up. 39% of people said that the workload was affecting a contributing factor to their stress, and 33% of the people said it was interfering with their personal life. 27% of men and 31% of women claimed that their employers didn't have sufficient resources to help manage that stress. So essentially, a third of the population was overworked, stressed, and didn't have the means to deal with it. And this only heightened during the pandemic. The lockdown closed our offices and universities, forcing them to stay home, and blurring the lines between work-life boundaries. Hearing the heartbreaking news during that summer and seeing the fatality rate increases only further heightened that stress response and contributed to the current economic trend, the Great Resignation, where people are voluntarily resigning from their jobs and looking for companies that promote a work-life balance. What we have learned through the pandemic is the need for a work-life balance, the need to prioritize and manage the various stressors. The workforce has come out stronger, resilient to stress, and the outlook has changed. According to the Microsoft Work Trend Index, it showed that employees are now valuing companies who maintain a positive culture, promote mental health and well-being benefits, giving flexible work hours, as well as enough vacation time. All things that promote a work-life balance and programs to help manage that stress. So how do we take advantage of it? How do we help ourselves to maintain that work-life balance? In science, we use something called the scientific method, where we first have an aim, then we have our methods, what we want to do, then we have our methods, how do we go about it, and then lastly we have our results, what we have learned and why it is important. So we already know the aim is to achieve a work-life balance. So the methods. I have created 3 categories that I think are helpful, but by no means these are the complete list, as each individual is unique and it can be applied to your personal self. The 3 are attitude, self-care, and compartmentalization. So ASC, or Anjumana Saifi Chicago, so if you remember this talk, as well as it's ask yourself. So when you're stressed out, I'd like you to ask yourself and always respond, I am doing fantastic. I am doing great. I am doing the best I can. Which leads into the first one, attitude. That's a positive outlook. And it's also the hardest to implement, since it's a change in mindset. Acceptance is a difficult state of, gives me that time to just calm down, and it's a peaceful for me. And I can admit that it's a hard thing to achieve, and I'm still working on it. Other people find it useful to use journaling as a mode to release their thoughts and feelings. One of my colleagues, she does this, and it has helped her through her divorce. Another coping mechanism is to let go of things we can't control. Say, well, this always happens to us. When we're late, we get stuck in traffic. And it's easy to get frustrated about that situation, but it's not like we can move the cars any faster. Another simple example, sometimes I let my daughter pick out her clothes. And sometimes she matches and it's all coordinated and beautiful, but sometimes she just really wants to wear bright green socks with a blue shirt. And I let her have it. At least her feet are warm. It's about picking the battles. It also helps with something called decision fatigue, where having to be so stressed about all the little things in our life that when we need to make that one important decision, we're tired and we can't do it. If these are all the examples I just gave you, they are also small examples. In bigger stressful situations, when things don't go out as planned, or when friends hurt us, it's hard to accept, forgive, and let go of the situation. Maulana Ali has famously said, "Asin ila man asa ilaik," forgive and return with kindness. Another point is accepting help as a powerful tool to reduce stress. It's difficult to ask for help. We think, oh, we're strong, we can do this by ourselves. But we have a supportive group of people that we can count on during our difficult times, and we should use that support group. The one thing that I've learned is the common one that is always implemented, which is exercise and physical activity. I'm not well in exercise. I don't like it. I think doing the dishes is exercise enough. But what we can do is start small. So for myself, Durratu Sharaf, my daughter, she is very active. So I take her out, I play frisbee with her, to start for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and then go on gradually get longer and longer. So my mentor, she actually schedules her exercise period for softball or whatever, biking, whatever she wants. And hopefully I hope to attain that one day. But always start small, bite-sized chunks. The last is compartmentalization. It's to break down your routine and get through the day efficiently. Each of us have multiple roles. We are spouses, parents, family members. We are employees, business owners, and active community members. Each of those roles have a task and requires our attention. So not to feel overwhelmed by one role, we need to set boundaries. So when I'm at home, I'm a mom. I take care of my child, and I give her as much as I can that hour or so of attention. So during that time, I turn off my phone, or at least put it away in another room. I don't clean up after her. I try to just let her be, and I don't do other housework at that, just for that moment. But then after that, I take her and do the laundry and help with the dishes. So she helps me put the clothes in the washing machine and in the dryer. She helps me unload the dishes. But so things that we can, she feels involved, and my work is also getting done. Similarly, when I'm at work, I use that time to focus on lab. So for writing my thesis or finishing experiments. So I've shown you a calendar schedule of what I like to do, is actually blocking off a section of my day for an experiment that I want to do, or to sit down and write for a couple of hours on a paper or something. But it also includes playtime for my daughter. So I wanted to take her to the library for a couple of hours. So I blocked those times off, giving me like time to finish the activity and still get through the day efficiently instead of burning myself out on one project. Along those lines, once that hour is done, I tell myself, well, I'm off duty. Once I leave the lab, I'm no longer a PhD student, and I'm now a mother and a spouse. And I will come back to it tomorrow. And so that helps with managing work and reducing stress. Another tip is to learn to say no, which is really hard, for me at least. We need to know how much we can handle at one time and say no to other tasks. So in the beginning, my story, what I should have done was say no to the second set of data that I thought I was going to be able to analyze during my maternity leave. That way, it would have helped me reduce that tension and that stress. Along those same lines, having a to-do list, a scribbling list, to scribble down jots and things that get overlooked throughout our day. I like to keep a huge whiteboard on my dresser. It has a calendar, it has my to-do list, it has all the appointments, all the weddings that I need to go to, all the invitations, but it also has simple tasks that I need to achieve. So currently I have schedule the vaccine shot for my daughter, the second one, and then get my car oil changed, or simple things like that. My husband and my father are more tech-savvy people, so they have all of this on their phone, but it's all a central location for them, and it's on a shared family calendar. So it makes it easy for them to know what to do, and also for us to know where they are. And it helps by reducing mental load. So mental load is the simple, carrying those simple responsibilities of the daily life. And if we're writing things down, or if we're sharing what we want to, we can divide and conquer between our family members in the house, or similarly between team members when accomplishing a project. So we can use these guidelines to help reduce stress and improve work-life balance. But why are we doing this? We know that it helps us physically and helps us emotionally, but it also helps us socially. I want to share an experiment with you that showed that the amount of nurturing a mother animal provided to its newborn baby played a part in determining how that baby responded to stress later in life. So the animal baby of a nurturing mom turned out less sensitive to stress later than a baby who, from a negligent mom. And this was because that baby developed more cortisol receptor. The hormone that I was talking about, it sticks to cortisol and dampens the stress response. So what these are epigenetic changes. So changes that affect how our genes are expressed rather than changing the genetic code. The surprising part is that these epigenetics from one generation was passed down to several generations. So we can see that if we can control our stress and balance the various pressures of the world, and we are able to give that attention to our children, we are preparing them and we're increasing their stress resilience.